30 seconds and counting. 25 seconds and counting. We are still go. 20 seconds. Guidance alert. The guidance system now going internal. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening to viewers in Europe and Africa. Good afternoon to viewers in the Western Hemisphere, and good very early morning to viewers in the Pacific Rim. Welcome to the Angry Astronaut. First of all, I want to make sure that I can be heard. Make sure that you put a posting up there in case there are any problems. So far, everything is sounding good as far as audio is concerned, as far as we know. But nevertheless, hello, Sue. I hope you're doing well today. Sue, by the way, was my host just a few days ago in Los Angeles. She put me up at her fine home while we discussed matters regarding the label release experiments on the Viking landers back in 1976, seeking to get acknowledgement for that, and talking about the possibility of just putting out the word that support would be appreciated, because if the experiment can be reproduced, then SpaceX is committed to taking it to Mars. So that's what we need to talk about today. Where is everybody checking in from, by the way? Just make sure. Hello, Argentina. Thanks very much for watching today. Really, really appreciate it. We have a crowd of 66. Commence order 66, right? Let's see, for all of you Star Wars fans out there. Hey, John, hope you're doing well today, John Morgan. Once again, we're going to be discussing the Starship. It's been a little while since I've talked about that. Hello, Nottinghamshire. Hello, 4 Marks UK. Hello, Flagstaff. Very nice town, by the way. Love Flagstaff. Hello, Northern Ireland. Thanks very much for joining us today. And Kent in the United Kingdom, and Dayton, Ohio. Really appreciate you folks joining us today. Hello, Österreich. Robert, thank you so much for the financial support, as always, from Valdosta. Really appreciate it. Airborne Bob, always here to support our channel. Sue, thanks for saying that. Really enjoyed being there. Just an incredible experience to come out to LA and had an opportunity to meet you and your family, and to see a lot of things in Los Angeles I had never seen before. Hello, Stockholm. Really appreciate you checking in. Hello, Nome, Alaska, and München, depending on what part of Germany you're in. Thanks very much for watching. Appreciate that, Gary. Glad that Flagstaff loves the Angry Astronaut. So once again, we are going to be discussing Starship, and most importantly, though, we're going to be discussing the possibility of Starship going to Mars and Starship Flight 9. This is a very big deal that's coming up. It's been delayed again. And of course, just because it's been delayed again, overall, they conduct these test launches very swiftly compared to everybody else. Nobody carries out test launches as fast as SpaceX does. That's just their philosophy, this iterative design philosophy. And in my opinion, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. John, thank you so much for the tenor. I really, really appreciate it. And once again, any support would be appreciated. Also, there's details in the description on how to do that, because I'm heading to Washington, D.C. in 2 days. And I've already received a fair amount of support for that. So thank you so much. But As is the case always when you're talking about these sorts of things, the budget continues to balloon with plane tickets. I had to rent a car. I thought I could just do Ubers to the National Archives, but unfortunately, the stuff I'm looking for, the UFO footage, is in closer to Baltimore, so I had to rent a car, that sort of thing. In any event, if it's something you'd like to support, all the details are in the description, or you can hit that super chat, either one. Thanks again for your support. Really appreciate it. So let's talk about Flight 9 and how this relates to Mars, because Elon, as Elon usually does, he's put this really aggressive timeline for Mars. I was, to answer the question that the Matt man just asked, I was going to go to Flight 9, or I was looking at the possibility of going to Flight 9, depending on how much the viewers wanted me to do it. But they pushed it out another week, and I can't wait another week. I need to get back to Britain. If for no other reason, I have a medical condition that requires a prescription, and I can't be away from the clinic that I work with in London for too long of a time without that becoming problematic for me. So I kind of need to get back for medical reasons, if for no other reason. So yeah, the 27th is the latest date that we've heard, and that was just too late for me. So I'm going to miss that flight. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate because we have the first reuse of the booster. And this is one of the reasons that Flight 9 is so important for future Mars missions, because Mars, or the moon for that matter, is really not feasible unless we have reusability, at least on the booster. You can't be throwing away 33 Raptor engines plus 6 Raptor engines on every flight and stand a chance of getting to interplanetary destinations simply because of the number of refueling missions that are required. Now, the good news is that we have seen a lot of evidence to indicate that booster catches are getting pretty reliable thus far. We've seen several successes in a row. Very impressive indeed. So if they can carry out this booster reuse on this particular flight, if they can successfully catch that booster after using it twice and then use it a third time, that will put this program ahead in a huge way, because even if you're not reusing the orbiter, reusing the booster, the booster is by far the most expensive part of the rocket, simply because of all of those Raptor engines. So that's what makes this flight so incredibly important. We got producer with a hypothetical. Go ahead. Okay. Here's the question that the producer just asked, and it's a very good question indeed. What if, or this is more of a hypothetical, what if Elon figures out that this current design is not really viable for going to Mars? Perhaps they already know that. And what if instead they use Starship to build a bigger orbital ship to go to Mars? In many ways, I mean, I've talked about that many times on this channel. The idea of building a more robust interplanetary vessel in orbit, utilizing, right, exactly. Producer just pointed out that it would become a Mars cycler. For those of you who are not familiar with that, it's an idea that Buzz Aldrin, who is now an engineer, has come up with. The idea of, instead of having it land, have it cycle from orbit to orbit, using Hohmann transfer orbits to go back and forth to Mars continuously. And yeah, maybe that could be the case. You know, honestly, I don't take anything that SpaceX says seriously until it actually happens. They might try to catch it. But nevertheless, it's probably right about that Starship nominal. But still, if they can get a successful reuse out of the booster, that would be great. Whether they catch it or not. But nevertheless, until they take that step forward, until they use a booster more than twice, that puts Starship in a position to where there's still a huge hurdle that needs to be cleared before a Mars mission can seriously be talked about. Because again, without it, and yeah, it's actually for the question that was just asked about the drug, it's actually Subutex, not Suboxone. But nevertheless, yeah, that's what I take for my addiction condition. So in any event, yeah. So and again, since it's not going to be catched, once again, caught as I don't take anything 100% seriously until it actually happens from SpaceX. You never know when there's going to be last second changes, but if they don't catch it, the one thing that they have said is that there is a larger debris field that's been accounted for in the FAA permit, the FAA launch license. There is an anticipation that there could be debris spreading further out of the exclusion zone than was originally thought because of the reuse of the booster. There's a little worry about that, and we'll see. Let's hope that there isn't a pad anomaly or a airburst anomaly over the pad. That would be very grim indeed. So let's hope that nothing like that happens. But again, that's a hurdle that needs to be cleared, guys. We're not going to have a flight to Mars. We are not going to have I apologize. I was distracted for a second. We are not going to have a mission to Mars until that hurdle can be cleared. Until we do catch a reused booster, then there's no hope, because let me explain why for those of you who are not familiar. An interplanetary flight of Starship with a landing on the surface of the red planet requires a complete refueling of the orbiter, of the lander, shall we say. That requires 10 missions, 10 flights of the biggest rocket in human history. We don't want, it's not a practical or economic solution to be throwing away 39 Raptor engines on every flight of a refueling tanker, and also blowing these refueling tankers up as well. That's going to run into enormous amounts of money. I don't care how cheap they've managed to get these Raptors. It doesn't matter. Throwing away that much in terms of equipment is going to be cost prohibitive. It's going to make the mission comparable to an SLS mission to Mars, throwing away that many rockets. You can't do that. You got to have reusability, at least with the booster. So that means, since they're not catching the booster on Flight 9, assuming that they don't change their minds at the last second, that's something that they need to master. And then, of course, we have the orbiter as well. It's going to be extremely expensive to send out interplanetary missions if you have to throw away 10 tankers with every flight. You've got to recover the orbiter as well. And thus far, no attempt has even been made so far to catch it. Now, it's looked good. These little hovering soft landings on the ocean have looked impressive thus far, but nevertheless, hasn't happened yet. We haven't seen even an attempt at a catch or landing of the orbiter. And in my opinion, we can still get past that, at least for the first test flight to Mars. Maybe you could throw away 10 orbiters, but 10 boosters and 10 orbiters, that starts getting very, very cost prohibitive. So, okay, we've got that. Let's assume that we get past the reusability stage. All right, so far we've talked about low Earth orbit refueling, but we've never actually seen so much as a prototype Starship tanker. And that's what's going to be necessary, right? Not just a Starship tanker, but also a fuel depot in orbit. You're going to need both of those things in order to make refueling in low Earth orbit practical. So the rockets that we have seen thus far none of them have been tanker prototypes at all. There are additions that need to be made, modifications that need to be made to a Starship in order for it to hook up to another Starship or to a fuel depot and pump 100 tons worth of methane and liquid oxygen into the fuel depot. And then the fuel depot, in turn, will ultimately have to pump 1,200 tons worth of methane and liquid oxygen into the ship that eventually goes to Mars. That hasn't even been tested yet. The furthest that it has gone up to this point is one test tank inside of Starship pumping a small amount of fluid or fuel or something into another tank. Fluid dynamics, the mechanics of fluid dynamics are a nightmare to any engineer. It is a very difficult thing to control the behavior of fluids. That difficulty increases many times over if you're talking about microgravity fluid dynamics. It just changes tremendously. So the barrier, the challenge of attempting to transfer 100 tons worth of fuel from of supercooled fuel from one vehicle to another in orbit several times over, and also to maintain a high launch cadence, a high enough launch cadence whereby that fuel is not going to boil off into space. Because keep in mind, once that stuff is pumped into a fuel depot or into a ship, whatever, it immediately starts to boil off. The effects of vacuum and also the wide variations of temperature in orbit, enormous amounts of heat when the rocket is exposed to the sun, and then cooling down tremendously when it's in Earth's shadow. All of that starts to create a boil off phenomenon, and that takes time. That starts to happen immediately. And unless you get your ship fueled up rapidly with a rapid launch cadence of tankers, it's going to be gone in a few months, or at least 30, 40, 50% of your fuel is going to burn off in a time frame of about 6 to 12 months or so. It's really nasty. And so therefore, instead of 10 refueling missions, you might need 12, 14, 16. And the longer it takes you to get that entire refueling process completed, the more the boil off is going to lose a lot of that liquid oxygen and methane into space. Very, very grim indeed. How many Falcon 9s went up before it became a sure thing? Yeah, it takes a while, space stuff, definitely. Although Falcon 9 was more successful with its first 8 test launches than Starship has been. It definitely had more successes. That being the case, though, Starship is a far more challenging rocket than Falcon 9. So all that being the case, there are certain things that you can do to a refueling depot to avoid some of that boil off. You can have an active cooling system, sort of a refrigeration system on your rocket that can control boil off. But of course, the problem with that, a refrigeration system that's enough to chill 100 tons worth of liquid, that's a heavy refrigeration system. And the heavier it is, the less fuel you can take to orbit. So that's a problem. Another possible solution is a sunshade, a deployable sunshade that covers most, if not all, of your rocket, or you can have it expand and then point the rocket towards the sun, keeping your rocket perpetually in shadow. If you do that, then you can reduce propellant boil off substantially. In the laboratory, they have managed to get hydrogen propellant boil off close to 0%. Engineers have been able to manage that in the lab, but it can be done with a combination of refrigeration and a sunshade. Again, though, all of these things weigh a lot. They have mass. Now, another possibility might be the idea of having a dedicated mission to bring the refrigeration system and sunshade up on a separate rocket and transfer all of that system over to the fuel depot. That's another possibility that might work. But again, we have yet to even see a prototype, a drawing, a CGI image of any of these things yet. Does that mean that it doesn't exist? Well, no. Perhaps SpaceX is getting ready to unveil all of that stuff to us. But generally, they do like showing this thing a little kind of early on. And thus far, we have yet to see it. A moon base for resources. Handsome, you're right. That would be a great thing, because if you can transport your oxygen, liquid oxygen that you mine on the moon to low Earth orbit, because the moon only has 1/6 of Earth's gravity, the amount of delta V required to go from the moon to Earth orbit is much, much less than the delta V required to go from the surface of the Earth up to orbit. But of course, it's going to be a long time before we have a moon base that's mining these resources and sending them to low Earth orbit. So, all of that having been said, with all of those challenges in front of us, in front of SpaceX anyway, do we really think that it's remotely possible that Starship will be on its way to Mars anytime in 2026? In my opinion, not just no, but hell no. I don't see how SpaceX is going to be able to jump all of the hurdles that I just talked about in the time that's remaining between now and 2026. Now, granted, I am totally fine with Elon setting these unrealistic expectations to try to get his people enthused and motivated and all that. Sure, I would love to see that. Hey, traveler, maybe you're right. Maybe we'll see an orbital fuel depot in the presentation talk this week. That would be great. That would be a fantastic step. But the idea of seeing that design, or to see the concept for that design, and for that concept to become reality in 12 months, and also to carry out 10 refueling missions in 12 months at time, or maybe a little bit more than that, before the launch opportunity, the launch window between Earth and Mars closes. I don't see it even being remotely possible. I just don't. As a matter of fact, I've already put forward a bet, but I'll make it again. If SpaceX manages to do that in 2026 and actually gets Starship to Mars, I'm not saying they have to land or anything, just get it to Mars atmosphere, I will tattoo SpaceX fanboy on my butt. 100% committed, I will do that. That's how much I believe that this is not going to happen. In any event, yeah, it's a big challenge. Can it be done eventually? Hell yes. I think this is a good idea. And if Starship isn't even the best solution, there are other solutions that might work out as well. As producer mentioned before, the idea of building an interplanetary cycler of some kind, utilizing Starship's unique capabilities, the fact that Starship can carry so much mass up to orbit each time. You could build a huge interplanetary starship in short order, utilizing that type of technology. That might be the best solution. But once again, that's not going to happen anytime in the really near future, certainly not in the next couple of years. Anton M., thank you so much. Really appreciate your support. By the way, guys, just again, to reiterate, I am on my way to Washington, D.C. day after tomorrow. And then from Washington, D.C., I'll be heading to New York to catch my flight back to the UK. And while I'm in Washington, D.C., I will be at the National Archives. And actually, it's in Maryland, where this particular archives are, that has image archives and also film. That's what is the most important thing. What I am looking for are 2 CIA films that were taken in 1954 that have UFOs in them, apparently. They were examined by the Air Force and by Project Blue Book at the time, and up to today, they remain unexplained. Why not use the third stage? Great idea, actually, Francois. The idea of putting a third stage in Starship has been talked about many times. That would definitely reduce or perhaps even eliminate the necessity for refueling. However, it also reduces the amount of payload pretty tremendously. I mean, instead of taking 100 tons to Mars, you're taking more like 20 or 15. But nevertheless, yeah, good idea. But up to this point, we have yet to see so much as a prototype for a third stage for Starship, let alone anything that's likely to fly inside of the next couple of years. Ben asks, is SpaceX working on a nuclear engine? No, they aren't. But there are others working on it. For example, pulsar fusion. It's a very good point, though, Ben. If pulsar fusion can put up the nuclear engines that they're talking about, that would change everything. That would eliminate almost all of those requirements. So we'll see. That could definitely change things. But once again, will any of that happen by 2026? Sadly, no. So can we imagine any scenario whereby Starship could reach Mars in 2026? Sadly, in my opinion, no. I don't see any possibility of that transpiring between now and then. Too many things have happened to delay Starship's development. And not to say that any huge mistakes have been made, that's just how development goes. But too many things have happened since the first flight of Starship over 2 years ago, the first test flight of Starship, and now that has held up this process, that has put a delay on Elon's dream of reaching Mars. We, of course, had that first flight and the debacle of the destroyed launch pad. The fact that just because he was so impatient, Elon decided to press the button when there was no suppression system, nothing to protect the launch pad from the fury of 33 Raptor engines. That alone created a 6-month delay. And then now we've had two anomalies back to back that have again created a sense of uncertainty in the program. Does that mean that I believe that Starship may be fatally flawed? Some people are definitely saying that. No, I don't. I really don't. I think that there's some very smart people dedicated to making Starship happen that are not going to willingly and knowingly devote themselves to a lost cause. I don't believe that. So, best case scenario, I think 2028 may be possible. But what's got to happen, though, is we've got to start having flawless test flights. And since we're not going to be catching the booster with Flight 9, which again, understandable reasons, but since that's not going to happen, this will not be a flawless test flight. There's no way to make it a flawless test flight. It will be the first successful reuse of the booster. That's a great thing. But nevertheless, those boosters need to be reused again and again and again, not just once. So we need to have not only a successful reuse, but those boosters need to be caught. They need to be used again and again. We need to get 10, 11, 12 reuses out of these boosters. 2040, more like, it could be so, Roland. I hope not, but it's possible. No, 2028, just to be clear, that's the first unmanned Starship mission to Mars. In terms of, best case scenario for a human mission, 2034, maybe, like almost a decade from now, in order to get Starship up to the point to where it's reliable enough to where we could really logically, realistically risk human beings on a mission to Mars. Yeah, I think it's going to be a while before Starship reaches that level of reliability to where they could really take a chance with that. And there are many, many other technologies that still need to be developed between now and then, because it's not just a matter of getting humans there. Those people need to get back. And the only way they're going to get back is with a bunch of other new developments on Mars that we haven't even started yet. Mining ice and harvesting carbon out of the Mars atmosphere. So many other things that need to happen in terms of making all of those technologies, bringing those technologies to maturity before there can even be a chance of mining and refining enough fuel to get Starship back, as Elon talks about. Those are huge, huge obstacles standing in the way of SpaceX and Elon's dreams. Now, again, unachievable? No. I think that the movers and shakers of spaceflight, from NASA and Apollo, and the amazing accomplishments there with the Soviets and Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin, um, and the engineering miracle that the space shuttle was, the Apollo 13 rescue, and everything that SpaceX has accomplished with reusability. I think all of those things have demonstrated what humans are capable of doing when they put their minds to it, and when there is a unity of purpose and a team of talented people who are all trying to achieve the same thing, and not letting secondary concerns and outside issues like politics get in their way. If they can work unobstructed and unharassed on these sorts of objectives, these sorts of grandiose missions, I think it's very possible for any of this to be accomplished. I have a lot of faith in humanity and our ability to solve problems. But I don't have a lot of faith in our ability to solve problems if people are constantly getting in our way. And unfortunately, a lot of that has been happening lately. And until that stops, I don't see us reaching Mars in 2026 or anytime in the near future. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Once again, if you want to support this trip of mine to the National Archives in DC, all the details are in the description. And until next time, stay angry about space.